My name is Chris Jacks. I am a tutor for the SHSAT at Ivy Tutors Network. Today, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of all of the sections of the SHSAT with some examples in each section. So the SHSAT, as I'm sure you know, is broken down into two main sections, the ELA, English Language Arts, and the Math section. The ELA section is further broken down into revising and editing and reading. The revising and editing section is even further broken down into standalone revising and editing and a longer passage-based revising and editing. First, I'm going to start with a brief rundown of some of the grammar rules that we have. Now, the best first place to start when doing a grammar question, whether in the standalone or in the longer passage-based section, is to just read the sentence and see if anything feels wrong. You sort of read it out loud in your head, and if you get that biting down on a piece of tinfoil feeling when you're reading it, then you know something's wrong. But a systematic approach is sometimes a little bit better. And so what I'm going to do now is give you some of the main grammar rules that you need to know. These will both apply to the standalone and the passage-based section. So our first one is the subject to verb agreement. So in a sentence, the subject and verb must agree with each other in number, as in singular or plural. So let's start with the incorrect one in red. Crocodiles was increasing in the swamp. Now I'm sure you say, well, that's obvious, Chris. Well, sure it is, but that's what's nice about these is that you probably already know a lot of these rules. You just don't know what they're called. So the correct is crocodiles were increasing in the swamp. You see that crocodiles is plural and were is the plural past tense version of the to be verb. Our next one is pronoun agreement. So pronouns replace nouns. Pronouns are I, we, he, she, they, it. Those are the regular ones. There's possessive ones as well. But at any rate, they all need to agree with their antecedents, the nouns that they refer to, in number, gender, and person. So in this case, in the incorrect one, each of the students should bring their own textbook. Now, it seems like it's plural because of students, but the each separates it into singular. So their, by the way, on the SHSAT is always plural. It never refers to a singular person. So the correct version of that would be each of the students should bring his or her own textbook. Next, we have the use of modifiers. Modifiers are words that describe or modify other words and should be placed close to the words they modify and should agree in number and gender. For example, here's an incorrect version of a modifier. The boy gave his mother the flowers smelling sweet. Okay, so it sounds weird, right? That should be the first thing that tips you off that there's something wrong with it. Well, what do we want to do? We want the flowers to be sweet smelling. We don't want the boy to be smelling sweet or anything other like that that's confusing. So the correct answer is the boy gave his mother the sweet smelling flowers. Sweet smelling modifies flowers. All right, next we've got use of verb tense. So verbs should be used in the appropriate tense to indicate the time of the action or event. So as in present or past tense for the most part. Incorrect is our first one. Yesterday, Matilda goes to the store to buy groceries. Well, goes is present tense, but we're talking about yesterday. So we need to make it past tense. So our correct answer is yesterday, Matilda went to the store to buy groceries. The last one for this section is the use of punctuation. Now, there are lots of punctuation rules, and I'm not going to get too much into that. But in this case, we've got quotes, which can be confusing for a lot of students, a lot of adults too. When you have quotes in a sentence, the sentence should stand exactly the same way as it would without quotes with your punctuation. So if you're combining, say, an independent clause, which is the equivalent of a full sentence, the dependent clause. So I'm just going to give an example that's not on here. So if I said something like, I went to the store, comma, but it was closed, period. I went to the store is an independent clause. The but after the comma is a conjunction. And the next one, I went, but it was closed, is another independent clause. So we're linking two independent clauses with a comma and a conjunction. Now, in this example that we have here, we have quotation marks. So the incorrect show we see says, she said, quote, I love you, period. He replied, I love you too. Now, we've got the period in that one outside of the quotes. We want the period to be inside the quotes. So the correct answer has a comma after she said, comma, I love you, period, inside the quotes. He replied, I love you too, period, inside the quotes. Now, we will see a lot more of these when you take the test. These are the important places to start, and we will definitely learn more of these as you go along, but for today, this is a good place to begin. So as I mentioned before, the SHSAT also includes a passage length revising and editing section that tests students' ability to identify errors in sentences and revise them for clarity and accuracy. So here's some more revising rules, and these apply more directly to the longer passage length revising and editing, but you might see them pop up on the standalone section as well. So our first one is to eliminate wordiness. So sentences should be concise and to the point. Unnecessary words or phrases should be eliminated. So for our example, the original, the reason why she decided to go to the store was because she needed to buy some milk. As I'm sure you can tell, that's way long. We don't need all that stuff. So the revised version says, she went to the store to buy some milk. So my suggestion with a question like this is the first one that you should look at is the shortest answer. Now, not the shortest answer will not always be the right one, but it's a good place to start when you're trying to decide which one is right. So you'll look at the shortest one, and if it has all the ideas of the original sentence in it, and it's grammatically correct, that's your answer. And sometimes it's just as simple as that, which is great. All right. Our next one is to clarify meaning. So sentence should be clear and unambiguous. Now, unambiguous means they have more than one meaning. We don't want that. We need to revise them to clarify their meaning. So if we look at the original here for number 2, the dog chased the cat across the lawn and into the house, and then it ran away. Now, the problem with that is in the last clause, and then it ran away. What is it? Well, we need to say who or what it is. In this case, the dog chased the cat across the lawn and into the house, but the cat managed to escape. We could have said, but the cat managed to run away. That would have been fine. The important part is that we have cat there. All right, next we have parallel structure. So parallel structure means that you set things up in a sentence the same way in the beginning, the middle, and the end, or just in the first part and the second part. Right? So if we look at our original here, her favorite hobbies are reading, swimming, and to play tennis. Now, I want you to just edit that yourself. You're probably saying, Chris, well, why would you say play tennis when you just said reading and swimming? Well, you wouldn't, right? So what we're going to do is make them all match. We're going to say her favorite hobbies are reading, swimming, and playing tennis. You notice how reading, swimming, and playing all end in ing. All right. We also need to do a very similar thing with verb tense, which is number 4 here. So we need a consistent verb throughout. So we've got in the original, she wakes up early, brush her teeth, and eat breakfast. Well, if she wakes, shouldn't it be that she brushes and eats as well? And that's what our answer is. She wakes up early, brushes her teeth, and eats breakfast. If you were saying that out loud, you would never say it the first way. So the idea is to try to edit these answers before you ever look at the answer choices, match your best answer with their answer, and go from there. All right. we talked about pronouns before. Here's another example. The student turned in the homework late, so they received a lower grade. Now, what is wrong with that? We talked about it before. They has to refer to more than one person. And so in this case, we need to change it so it's either get rid of that pronoun, which is what we've done here, or add in another one. Next, we're going to spend a little bit of time doing some reading. Now, I chose a poem for us to work on today because most people find the poetry to be the most difficult part of the reading section. The nice thing about the poetry section is that the rules that we want to use, the strategies that we want to use on the poetry section are the same ones we want to use and that we will learn for the reading section. Now, one main thing that I always want you to be thinking about when you're doing a reading section is to try to come up with your own answer before you ever look at the answer choices. So first off, we're going to read this poem. I'm going to read it out loud. You read along with me, and then we will look at the first 3 questions related to this poem. This poem is called Leisure by Amy Lowell. Leisure, thou goddess of a bygone age, when hours were long and days sufficed to hold wide-eyed delights and pleasures uncontrolled, by shortening moments when no gaunt presage of undone duties, modern heritage, haunted our happy minds, must thou withhold thy presence from this over-busy world, and bearing silence with thee disengage our twined fortunes? Deeps of unhewn woods alone can cherish thee, alone possess thy quiet teeming vigor. This is our crime, not to have worshipped, marred by alien moods, that sole condition of all loveliness, the dreaming lapse of slow, unmeasured time. All right, so looking at the very first question, it's asking us, how does line 1 contribute to the development of the central idea of the poem? All right, now, we want to try to come up with an answer for that ourselves. All right. Now, the nice thing about a poem is it usually has a title. And in this case, the title is Leisure. Well, that's very helpful because that is what the poem is about. All right. Now, let's answer how it contributes to the development of the central idea of the poem. We're going to read the first line again. Leisure, thou goddess of a bygone age. All right. Now here, we probably see a couple words that maybe are a little unfamiliar or very unfamiliar. That might be the case. Now, in this case, those words are thou, which just means you in old-timey English, and bygone. Well, bygone, you probably could figure that out. It means gone by. That means it used to be. So, if we're going to say, how does it contribute to the development of the central idea of the poem, we can say, well, leisure, thou goddess of a bygone age. So, leisure, she's gone. All right, now let's look at the answers and see which one matches with the idea that leisure is gone. Now, the first one, A, it confirms that the speaker is returning from a vacation. Now, that might be a tempting answer, but nowhere in here do we get anything about vacation, and this line certainly does not confirm that the speaker is returning from a vacation. Now, B, it shows that the speaker believes leisure to be a goddess. Well, that may or may not be true, but the central idea of the poem is that leisure has gone, not that the speaker believes leisure to be a goddess. This third one, C, it suggests that the speaker regrets the lack of free time. Well, what's another word for, or set of words for lack of free time? It may be that leisure has gone by. And so that is our correct answer. If we look at D, we can discard that pretty easily. We can see that it asks us, or it says, it gives examples of how people could spend their free time. We don't get any of that there. All right, next. So we want to look at the next one. So this one's a little bit different. It doesn't ask us a question. It gives us a sentence that we want to finish. So by addressing leisure directly, the author creates the effect of a. What we want to do here is try to finish this sentence. By addressing leisure directly, the author creates effect of a what? Okay. So we talked a little bit already about this leisure. She's the goddess of a bygone age when hours were long and days sufficed to hold. So you might be asking yourself, well, what kind of effect are we getting by addressing leisure directly? Well, what are we doing? We're missing leisure, right? Leisure has gone. She's gone by the wayside. We don't know where she is. She's certainly not here anymore. So if I was finishing this sentence, I would say something like, by addressing leisure directly, the author creates an effect of longing for something that has gone away. Now, if we look at answer choice E, that's very similar to what I just said. So we can ask ourselves now the answers as a yes or no question. So does the author create the effect of a powerful emotional sense of regret and remorse? And the answer to that is yes. So one strategy that you can use on these is to ask answers like this as yes or no questions, like I just did. So I'll do it again. Does the author create the effect of a powerful emotional sense of regret and remorse? And we would say, yes, absolutely, the author does. And so when you get a hard yes like that, that's your answer. Now, there's 3 answers to a yes or no question. You might say, well, there's only 2. It's yes and no. There's also maybe. Let's say you get 3 no's and a maybe. I want you to go with the maybe. Now, this takes practice. You're not going to get it exactly right the first time. But with that practice, with putting in the time on the drill and practice tests, working with your tutor, you will be able to develop the ability to do this pretty easily over time. All right, let's look at the third one, and that'll be it for the reading portion of this. Now, all right, let's take a look at question 3. So reading lines 4 through 6 from the poem. By shortening moments when no gaunt presage of undone duties, modern heritage haunted our happy minds, must thou withhold. Now, these lines help develop the theme of the poem by suggesting that what? So, we want to try to answer the sentence again like we did before. These lines help develop the theme of the poem by suggesting that what? Well, when our shortening moments no gaunt presage of undone duties, modern heritage, haunted our happy minds, must thou behold. All right. So we get our shortening moments in here. We have undone duties, we have a modern heritage. So I would say that these lines help develop the theme of the poem by suggesting that we've got a lot of stuff to do and not a lot of time to do it. Well, if we look at the answer choices, the one that is closest to that is D. It's that people feel that there's not enough time in the day because they have so many things to do. Well, we can try this again with the yes or no question part. So, is it suggesting that people have a rich tradition of customs and beliefs? No. Is it suggesting that the poem haunts people because they no longer respect her as a goddess? No. Is it suggesting that people must always be aware of the time and date and what they must do? No, it's saying the opposite of that, right? And that is the trap question. So watch out for that one. All right. So there are other types of reading in the SHSAT. There's factual passages. There's also fiction passages. But we can use a lot of these same strategies on there. The key, no matter what, is to try to find the answer in the passage as best you can before you ever look at the answer choices. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about math. Now, there are a lot of math topics on the SHSAT. So what I'm going to do right now is just give you a few of the strategies that you can use on the test. This is by no means exhaustive, so you'll need to learn some of the other strategies, but these are some of the ones that will save you time. They're sort of like shortcuts, and they will make your life easier when you're taking the test. Now, this may sound strange, but my motto on the math test is to do as little math as possible, but on purpose. So what I mean by that is I want you to work smarter, not harder. I do want you oftentimes to write down your work, show your work, draw on your page, that sort of thing. Absolutely. But we're not going to do more than we need to because we have not that much time to get a lot of questions done. So with that in mind, here are a few strategies that are very helpful to help you speed things up. All right. So first, if there are variables in the question and variables in the answer, plug in your numbers while following any rules given by the problem, such as x is greater than 3 or w minus 1 is an odd number. So for instance, if it tells you that x is greater than 3, plug in 4. When you plug in 4, check your answers, plug your 4 into the answer choices until you get the one that is correct. Similarly, if they say that w minus 1 is an odd number, find a value of w that makes w minus 1 an odd number. So let's say w is 6, which makes w minus 1 5. We'll see an example of this exact problem in a few minutes. Next, draw any figures that the test tells you about but doesn't give you. If they say that there's a square inside of a circle, draw a square inside of a circle. If they tell you that there's a goat tied to the corner of a rectangular building that sweeps out a circle with its leash, well, draw a rectangular building with a line off of it and sweeping out a circle. You'll get a lot of practice doing this, but basically, if they tell you about a figure that isn't there, you want to draw it. Another one, this is a slightly more specific one, but it's useful in general as well. So if the question is asking you something like, what's the least common denominator? Check the smallest answer choices first. So for instance, if you've got the denominators are 2, 5, and 7, you would divide whatever answer choice A is by 2, 5, and 7. Answer choice A will be the smallest one. If 2, 5, and 7 all go into answer choice A, that's your answer. So this also works if they're asking you for the greatest possible answer. Check the largest answer first and work your way down. Next, and this one is very useful, pre-reduce any multiplication that you have. So when you're pre-reducing multiplication, you want to, instead of do something like 50 times 20 over 30, you want to reduce each of those ahead of time. Now, next, I will give you a few examples of those things. So as promised, here's an example of one of those plugging in questions. So they tell us that w minus 1 must be an odd integer. Is an odd integer, which of the following must be an even integer? Well, if we want w minus 1 to be odd, let's say that w equals 6. So that would make w minus 1 equal to 5, which is an odd integer. Now, let's plug in w into these. So if we plug w plus 1 in here, we get 6 plus 1. Put that aside. So if we plug w in for 6 plus 1, we undo that. There we go. Okay. W is 6. 6 plus 1 is equal to 7, right? And that is no good for us, right? That is not an even integer. Similar, so now if we do for f, 2 times 6 minus 1, 2 times 6 is 12, minus 1 is 11. Not an odd, not an even integer. We do the same thing for G. So this is E, this is F, this is G, right? So if we do 2 times 6 minus 2, well, that gives us 12. A bit better, right? And so that is true, and that will be our right answer, but we could just check H just to be sure. And when we do that, we do 2 times 6 plus 1 is 12 plus 1, which is 13. So for each of those, we see that E does not work, F does not work, and H does not work, but G does work. And it's just about as easy as that. Now, of course, there will be more complicated questions than this, but this is a good start. And honestly, I think these ones are freebies if you know the rules. All right. Next, we have an example of a geometry question where they tell us about a shape that is not shown. Now, if you think back to what I said before, whenever they ask you about something that is not shown, we want to draw it. All right, so now they tell us that it is a square. So I'm going to draw myself a square. All right. Now, we see here that this hexagon is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sided. So if it's a hexagon that has 6 sides, we know that it has the same perimeter as the square that we have here. Well, if one side of my hexagon is 8, oh, also, they tell us it's a regular hexagon. Regular just means that all sides and angles are the same. So, for instance, a square is a regular rectangle. A equilateral triangle is a regular triangle. So, okay, let's go back to our perimeter. Our perimeter, they tell us, is the same as our square. So I drew my square. I'm just going to say one side of that square is X. Now, I see that the perimeter of this is going to be 6 times 8. Now, 6 times 8 is 48. And so now I know that the perimeter of my square, and they say perimeter, so I'm just going to draw all 4 sides of it. My perimeter is 48. So, well, how do we find the perimeter of a shape? We add up all the sides. And that's true whether it's variables or just integer values or any other number. So in this case, we'll find the perimeter of the square in terms of x. So it's x plus x plus x plus x, or 4x. That 4x, we know the perimeter is 48. All right. Now we're going to find, we're going to find x here. So we divide by 4, divide by 4, and we get x equals 12. Now we look back and we say, but none of the answers are 12. What are we supposed to do? Well, that's because we need to circle what they are asking for. And in this case, they're asking for the area. The area of a square is one of the sides squared, which is why they call it a square, or base times height. In this case, base times height are the same. So we would do 12 times 12, and we get 144 as our area. Now, in this case, don't worry too much about meters because all the answers are the same in meters. Okay, so that does it for us for today. Just giving you a few tips. This is just a taste of the many tips and strategies that you can get if you work with Ivy Tutors. All of us have been trained in these strategies. We all have lots of experience, and we can help you understand a test that is hard, but it is doable. One thing to remember about this test is you do not have to get 100% on any section to do well. You don't have to get 95% to do well. If you get 90% on each section, you're going to the school that you want to. So remember, it's supposed to be hard, but you can do it. All right, well, I look forward to seeing all of you out there. Good luck with your SHSAT prep.